All right, good morning, everybody. It is Friday, March 25th, 2022, and we're going to go ahead and get started here like we do every morning. I was out yesterday, so we do not have pre-market from then. But what I want to do really quickly here is just kind of review kind of some of the things that happened here over the last 2 days. So going back to, I believe this was the 23rd, so 2 days ago, just want to point out once again that we came up right into our expected resistance zone. We had 45.11 to 45.15.50. The high of the 22nd was 45.14.75, right? And then in the overnight session going into the 23rd, we had a test of this 45.13 multiple times, very, very shallow breaks of that level, and then went ahead and sold off. And as we came into the morning, I believe this was on the 23rd, we said we had our 44.73-ish up to 77. Remember, we had 74.50 as our eye level. We had that 44.77 level. And then we said if we get through that little zone, we were going to come down and potentially bounce somewhere between that 64 to 67, I believe, is the levels. We came right down to 65 here and bounced out. It's like magic every morning. And then it came down, and then it just kind of got messy at the end of the day. You can see that we basically kind of broke below this zone here and then came back up to the back end of it, rejected off the lower end of the range of that, rejected off the top end of the range, and then basically could not really get through, right? It kind of peaked above, and then came right up into it again and failed. Now the low of the 23rd, what was it? The actual low here, 44.45. Okay, our eye level, 44.45.50. So came right into our eye level and started bouncing out of there. And then even came down in the overnight session of the 23rd there, bounced just a tick in front of 44.45.50, and then started coming up to, push to these new highs. Now look what ended up happening here. We came right back into the zone of, remember, 74.50, 77, had a lot of trouble around there, did peak above again, but then came right back into 77 and failed, came right back to 77 and failed again, and then failed here again, and then finally came up, pulled back, held 74.50, came up, and where did we find a rejection, a major rejection here? On the 24th, yesterday, right at 96.75. Did it peak above a little bit? Yeah, but not my. I think it looks like it peaked by 4 or 5 ticks there, and then failed. Where did we pull back to and bounce? 44.77. So we came down and bounced right off 44.77 again. It's just unbelievable how many times the market just comes right into these levels, bounces out, and then came up. And where did we find trouble again? 96.75, not too surprising, pulled back, and then came up and pulled back right to one tick, 2 ticks in front of it, and bounced out of there. Now this is the overnight session from last night, so we've kind of gotten all through all the stuff we haven't reviewed for the last few days. And then look what happened here in the overnight session. So we chop around, right? It's not really much going on over here. Although we did get a nice, beautiful rejection to the tick off our eye level there. Came down, and that's probably a nice little retracement there if you look at it. That bounce was, yeah, just about the 38, 1 point in front of it. Bounces out, and then where do we go? What is the high of the overnight session, in the middle of the night? Oh, look, we come right to 45.27. We break it by 1 tick, and then go ahead and pull back here in the overnight session all the way back down. And that looks like it decided the market came right back down, and bam, came into the 50% retrace of that whole new leg. So now we're bouncing up, and this is kind of really important to me. Now, if we actually hold here and get some type of major sell-off off this line you see up here, that's going to be quite impressive, because that line right there is something we're going to talk about really quickly. So let me go ahead and jump up. If you remember, when we were looking at the higher time frames, let's go ahead and zoom out here, and I'll bring it actually to maybe even the 4 hour so we can see the bigger picture here. Do you guys remember when I drew the fib across the entire sell-off, and I said we had the all-time high at 48.01 all the way down, I believe, to 40.94.50? Remember, the last retracement level that we had was the 61.8, and it was sitting right there at 45.31 quarter. So the level that I was just mentioning here that we're rejecting from in the overnight session is the 61.8 of the entire sell-off from the all-time high. So is it a coincidence that the market came up here, came right into the 61.8, broke it by less than a point, okay, and then went ahead and rejected, and now in this overnight session we're actually pulling back? I don't think that's a coincidence. I think we've been watching this level literally for like, I don't even know now, maybe a month or two or three. We've literally been watching 45.31 quarter for a month or two, and now we just came up and are just about 10-point pullback from it right now. So again, that is the power of these fibs. Do they work every time? No, they don't work every time. And nothing works every time in trading. The whole point in trading is that we don't know what's going to happen next. So hopefully, if you've been in the game long enough, you understand risk management is really one of the most important things as a trader, right? You could be wrong. In fact, I'm only right about 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 times, like as far as getting a full winning trade, and yet I'm still insanely profitable. Right, so you don't need to be right every single time if you set up your risk management correctly. But when you are right and you nail one of those exact levels where we get a turn, you're going to make a lot of money. So let's take a look here. I'm not going to do too much on the higher time frames because we'll be back here on Monday to kind of scrutinize all that. But I don't think, again, much has really changed outside of the fact that we are getting a nice bullish follow through and we're retracing the last 2 or 3 months of price action. So we haven't gotten outside of it just yet, but we're getting pretty close. On the weekly chart, again, there's that 61.8 retracement level, 45.31 quarter that we just rejected from. 2 days ago when we were here for our pre-market, I said we kind of had a bearish divergence off that high that we wanted to watch. And price was down over here, right? Because overnight and yesterday we continued to push. So we have to redraw that up, and we still have the divergence. So that doesn't mean we're going to just sell off because there's a bearish divergence at the moment. We want to just watch this, because if the market starts to actually correct and pull back here, then we're going to have a nice clean confluence of the weekly and the daily up top here for the bears. So we just want to be aware of it. Hey, what's going on, LT? Just want to actually show you real quick, because we just talked about it. Where did we just fail in the overnight session? This level here, 45.31 quarter, that we just came up, broke it by a tick or two, and are pulling back from, is, and let me go back here, our 61.8 retracement of the whole sell-off. So again, 48.01 all-time high to 40.94.50, the low that we made a few months ago or whatever here. 61.8, 45.31 quarter. Market came right to it in the overnight session here and is getting a nice pullback. So let me go back here. We have a potential divergence as well, again, off the 61.8 retracement here. We see it on the weekly. We see it, you can argue it on the daily here. And then I believe the 4 hour as well has a bunch of divergences off these highs over here. So there is an argument for that case. If we do start to get a decent pullback here, it could lead to a pretty large push. When you have a weekly, more importantly, when you have your daily showing a potential divergence, that's what led to this whole sell-off from 48.01. That's what led to this bounce right here from 40.94.50, and then this bounce here at 41.29 when we pull back and retrace that leg. So these follow-throughs from daily divergences are very important to be aware of. So we do see it again on the daily, on the weekly, and arguably on this 4 hour area. Again, we pushed up right up into that 61.8, and there is divergence at the moment. Remember, it's a dynamic system, so within 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe 5 or 10 minutes into the open, we could continue to just push, right? So I'm not saying let's just go ahead and fade the market. It might not actually be a horrible trade if we come back up and test the highs here, because you have limited risk, right? And that's the name of the game for my kind of trading. I want to be able to get in, know where I'm wrong within a very tight range, and then if it works for me, I get a nice follow through to the downside. So there's an opportunity to maybe try the fade, but what I would tell you right now is I gotta wait to see what the internals are saying, but believe things are positive, pretty positive here, and then obviously, I mean, the bulls seem to be in power here, so fading might be a little bit more of a risky situation. But with that being said, still a pretty limited risk. If you're wrong for a point or two. If you're right, it could pull back 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 points. So just keep that in mind. I think that's it just from this higher time frame analysis. Again, we're holding the 61.8. And if the market does continue to push, which wouldn't be surprising this morning, we do have that major swing low that I guess we'll have to. I thought I had a lot of this stuff marked. Oh, okay, so it's this shaded region. So the lower end of this shaded region, again, if we get through the 61.8 right now, that lower end of that shaded region was 65.50, and 65.50, if you zoom out and look, is this naked swing low back here. So if we do get through there, we've got that 65.50 up into, again, 75-ish. And remember that zone right there is that major sell-off that we had from that double top. So if we get up there, there still could be a bunch of sellers. So just be aware of that. It might be a good spot to take profit. If we end up finding a long this morning, if the bulls are strong and they continue to rip, we can take some profit up in front of that area just in case we get a major failure. A little bit further than that, and remember every level above us is the same levels that I've been talking about for what? Let's see. Since we were up here testing these highs back at the beginning of March. So for at least over a month, we've been looking at the same potential resistance levels above. So I probably don't really need to continue to mention them because all you have to do is they should be marked from all the previous sessions we've had. So again, getting through that 75, 45, 80 highs is going to bring us up to the next major swing low and this little shaded zone that's pretty tight, like 45.97 to 4600. So in the most immediate area, that's what we're looking at. 4600 would be another 100-point push to the upside. And then any further than that from this higher perspective, there are some minor levels, but it looks like after that, the major zone that I'm watching is up here around about 46. Let's just get the actual number. 46.89.50. Let's say 46.90 to 47.02 quarter. Right, so that's that little zone up there that I would expect to see some trouble for the bulls. Any further than that, and we're right almost to the all-time highs again. And then there's one level that really sticks out to me here, and that is this kind of, let's see what it actually is. Well, I'm just going to eyeball it. So, I don't know what that swing low is. Oh, actually, let me just see. 47.40 up into like maybe 47.50 right there. So that little 10-point zone would be the next potential resistance. And remember, if the bulls are going to be strong, they're just going to go ahead and rip through a lot of this. But there's always the potential we're going to come up, test something, and just start failing. So that's why I like to take profit in front of those levels. Let's get into the 60-minute here and look at the major eye levels. So this morning here, if the market starts to pull back, there's some key levels I'm kind of watching. Let me do this first. There is a retracement here. I mean, there's a pretty obvious, and again, let's look at this from the perspective of legs in the market, right? We have the leg up, we have the pullback, we have the next leg up, right into our next expected resistance zone at 45.15. We have the pullback right to our major eye level at 45.50, and then we have the push right into our 61.8 retracement right here. And again, we might pull back. It might just continue to kind of inch higher and higher in a strong bullish push. But this is the new leg, right? From the low right around 45.50 right into our 61.8 retracement. So because of that, we've got to go ahead and draw our fib. We'll go down to the low right up to the high, which was 2 or 3 ticks above 31.50, 31.25. And you can see right now our 38 retracement is right in this box, right in front of our eye level. So our 96.75 to 98.75 potential support zone, right? So if it starts to sell off here, might be a good area to find a buy, or as I argue, take profit in case it does bounce. A little bit further than that, and the 61.8 down here is basically our swing that I guess this is potentially outdated level now. But we do have this little area in here, just about the 61.8 retrace from 78 down into, again, our eye level, our major eye level at 74.50. And 74.50, again, has been working a charm for quite a while. So watch that little area there if we do sell off. And then you can't ignore the fact that the 50% of this whole leg is sitting here at 44.8850. So I don't want to ignore that. Let's throw a line up there. And what I've kind of, what I started doing here, not kind of started doing, but what I started doing is for the major retracements on the screen, I'm just labeling with a line, but dash dot dot. Okay, so that way I know if I'm looking at this level on my shorter time frames, we're gonna have to copy this over. I know that it's a retracement line, right? So I'm gonna put these on here. So if we do pull back, we'll be aware we're pulling back right into the 50% retracement level, which doesn't really line up with anything else we have on the chart right now. So got that on there. We're getting close to the open here, but let's look. So in the most immediate area, we just highlighted some of the major zones that make sense. And remember, from the perspective of previous daily ranges, if we get down below the high of yesterday, get through our orange power level, that's not a good sign for the bulls to begin with. And then getting down through our magenta line here, not good for the bulls either. And then, from there, if it starts pulling back like that, we're going to want to be sellers down into those potential supports. But these breaks here are telling us something. That would be a first clue, second clue, third clue. The fourth clue is just breaking through yesterday's low, right? And then we can expect a nice straight shot all the way back to our major 44.15 level where we got the rejection just a few days ago, and then down into 4400 and a little bit further. All these zones down here you should already have marked because, again, we've been watching them for about 5 days now. So for basically the last week, we've been talking about the same regions down here. So I don't think it makes sense to really talk about them because they're already marked, already highlighted, and you should already have them on your chart if you are marking things every morning with us here. So we've got that stuff down there. That would be another over 200 points to the downside. So I think that covers all that stuff. And I don't know what else to say. If we do start pulling back and it's a heavy sell-off, remember we have a huge confluence of bearish or negative signals right off of a level that makes sense to hold for the bears. So just keep that in mind if it does start to get heavy here. And I think that's basically it. We've got our levels to watch this morning, and the market is going to open in 10 seconds. So have a great day. We're going to jump over to our members section to see what we can trade here this morning.